All right, welcome to our event today. On behalf of Candid Foundation, of APRI Armenia, and of Restart Initiative, I want to welcome you to our timely event, Resolving the Conflict Between Azerbaijan and Armenia. What is Germany's role? And my name is Wigger. I'm associate partner at the Candid Foundation, and in that position responsible for our South Caucasus and South Asia programs. So it's a critical time for the South Caucasus. When we planned this event, we believed that Azerbaijan and Armenia were walking a thin line between war and stability. And we asked us, what weight can Germany add as a more active participant in the diplomatic process? With its economic and political capital, with both Armenia and Azerbaijan, how can Berlin play a greater role in supporting the journey of building a lasting peace? Now, in a rapid turn of events, we are meeting here actually after a long day of military escalation 2 days ago and the rapid announcement of a ceasefire just yesterday. So today, representatives of the Armenian community in Nagorno-Karabakh are just meeting now in the Azerbaijani city of Yerevan with representatives of the Azerbaijani government to discuss matters of reintegration, rights and security into Azerbaijan and in Azerbaijan. The next days will be crucial in order to see whether we will see a mass exodus from Nagorno-Karabakh or if there is a feasible plan from the Azerbaijani government to safeguard and guarantee the rights of its Armenian population. This turn of events will also have repercussions on the Republic of Armenia, where Prime Minister Pashinyan has declared that Armenia will not interfere in Nagorno-Karabakh. And I don't want to comment much, but listen more to the perspectives presented here by our three speakers. But I think, and this much honesty is needed, that from a European perspective, the turn of the last days cannot be seen as a success. It represents a failure of the European approach in the peace process and in policy vis-à-vis its neighborhood, a failure in outcome, and a failure in building up strategic leverage to deliver the outcomes wanted. But it's also important to note that the peace process is not dead yet, and normalization of relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan can still be possible despite everything. So I appreciate that despite these events, we're all coming together here and talk and discuss what Europe can offer the countries in the region. What are the expectations and what are the realities? I would like to welcome Lara Setrakian, who's the president of APRI Armenia. It's a think tank based in Yerevan, and Lara has had a long history as a journalist and Middle East correspondent from various American news outlets, and has been like a policy or like a political active in the political process and actively watching them for quite some time. And with us is also Ahmad Alili, who's the director of the Caucasus Policy Analysis Center based in Baku. And Ahmad is also part of several initiatives on bilateral expert groups and so on between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And lastly, and the first one to speak, to give us an introduction, is Roth. Roth is a member of SPD and is the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee in Deutscher Bundestag. So before I give the floor to you, I would also like to thank all three organizations that are organizing this panel at this critical time today, and also the office of former German President Christian Wulff, who has been willing to host us today. So thank you. And Roth, please.
Good morning to everybody. I'm very pleased to be here, and it looks a bit like the Kremlin. Next time I would like to invite you to the Paul Löber House, I think the circumstances are a bit more relaxed and more calm. But thanks again for having me. I appreciate that the two ambassadors also join us. Leo, you sound like a diplomat. I'm definitely not a diplomat. I'm just an ordinary politician. And I'm definitely not a neutral actor. I'm a committed European. I'm committed to democracy, freedom, the rule of law. I hate military aggression. That's what you should know from the early beginning. So I'm not here like a moderator, or I'm not the president. I'm just an ordinary politician, and I'm proud to say the vast majority of my colleagues from all parties, or I would say from the democratic parties, are full in line with that what I said. Dear guests, I want to thank the Candid Foundation together with APRI Armenia and the Restart Initiative for organizing this timely discussion today. We are meeting a very, very difficult moment. On Tuesday, Azerbaijan launched an unproportionate and unacceptable military operation against the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. Civilians have been injured, killed, and displaced from their homes. I very much welcome the ceasefire and the resumption of talks between Baku and Stepanakert, but after months of isolation, the people of Karabakh are weak, desperate, and fear displacement. Under these difficult circumstances, it's even more important that the conversation about our peaceful resolution continues. That's why I'm so grateful for the opportunity to discuss the current situation and Germany's difficult role with experts from Azerbaijan and Armenia. My motto has always been, it's civil society stupid. At the moment, it seems almost impossible to imagine a peaceful and sustainable resolution. However, today's conversation between civil society representatives from Azerbaijan and Armenia gives me a little bit of hope. Let's build on that. Everyone knows my position around the table. I'm not quite sure, but I hope so. Therefore, I want to make only a few comments on why I do believe it's high time for the European Union and Germany to step up their engagement with the region. But above all, I want to listen to what the experts say, what Germany and the EU should do. So I'm more in a listening mode. I'm extremely curious to know a bit more from you. What is your expectation? What should we do? Because you know the position of the European Union and Germany in this region is extremely weak, extremely weak. How can we guarantee the security of the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh? How can we contribute to stable and sustainable peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia? Why do I believe the European Union and Germany should become more involved? First, the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia seems far away from Berlin. But if we have learned one lesson from the Russian aggression against Ukraine, is that Europe can't ignore Eastern Europe any longer. For far too long, we have neglected the entire region. This is finally and slowly changing. Even more so since Georgia received a European perspective last year. It's in Germany's and in the EU's interest to stabilize and bring peace to the South Caucasus. Second, the Russian influence has not contributed to peace and stability. For over 3 decades, Russia has been the dominant power in the region, but it has lost its credibility as mediator. The latest escalation proves once again that Russia is either unable or unwilling to find a just and sustainable peace. For me, the reason is obvious. The Kremlin feeds on instability and chaos because it helps to maintain its influence in the region. Third, The EU strategy of half-hearted engagement and equidistance has definitely failed. For years, we have considered the region to be Russia's backyard, Putin's backyard. When the Velvet Revolution took place in 2018, we applauded politely but left the democratic movement in Armenia out in the rain. At the same time, we pursued a strategy of equidistance towards Armenia and Azerbaijan. From a realpolitik point of view, this might still be a valid position, but I think it has not served us well. The latest Azerbaijani aggression shows once again how sure Aliyev is that the international community will remain silent. If we don't send a strong signal to Baku now, we risk the destabilization of the entire region. I'm really sorry for some of the distinguished participants. It might be a bit tough or harsh or rude, but that's my personal point of view. And I very much hope, that is my main goal, that we have the chance to come back to the negotiation table, but always based on trust and confidence. And the recognition of territorial integrity is peace, and also the commitment to solving the problems not with military aggression. I'm very curious to know a bit more from your side, and thanks again for your invitation.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. I will now hand over to Ahmad Alili from Baku.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this event, and frankly speaking, now that everybody is talking about that we are the people who should deliver the answers, we are a bit scared. I am personally scared. You know, like it's very hard to speak about something that is on development. So right now we are sitting here, they are meeting in Yerevan. So what to speak about the event, about the process that's in the process of, we don't know what's going to be the end result. So that is why it's very, let's say, not standard situation for the researchers. Usually researchers, they are the people who are speaking about the events that concluded. You can make some conclusions on the events, but today we are going to speak about the events that we have no information about this. So that's why what we are going to speak, it's going to be this week's truth. So the next week, situation might be completely different, and we might have to come back and revisit these ideas. But of course, there are certain, let's say, the issues that they are there, and it's universal, and they are going to discuss about this issue. But there are some points still we are going to touch, and that we want to make sure that there is a clear understanding on this issue, because we are, these kind of meetings, they always let parties to understand each other's concerns and how to move forward with taking into account that concerns. And I hope that this is the meeting that we are going to have today. So where to start? So probably I'm going to start with the ethnic cleansing. So that's the elephant in the room. So from Azerbaijan perspective, what happened in Karabakh in 1992, when the Azerbaijanis were expelled based on their ethnic identity. And there are no Azerbaijanis in Karabakh. I'm not talking about the Armenia and Azerbaijan itself. There were mutually, let's say, the Armenians left Azerbaijan, Azerbaijans left Armenia, but I'm focusing on Karabakh. What happened there, based on the ethnic identity? For Azerbaijan, it's ethnic cleansing. So, and there is now we are talking about the hypothetical ethnic cleansing. So from Azerbaijan perspective, the one that took place and then the one hypothetically can take place, there is no equality in these issues. So that is why it's very important that we distinguish this kind of approach, and I believe that many issues, many let's say, misunderstandings that we see in this case that can be resolved if we, at least we try to gain more information of the developments in the past. And I'm very pleased that now, yesterday was the President Ali's speech, and he clearly stated that there is no intention of any ethnic cleansing. No, like nobody wants to push out no one, and everybody wants to have Karabakh Armenians living on equal terms with the rest of the Azerbaijani population. So President Ali yesterday, he clearly stated that, and I believe that this is a very positive message. But also, we all understand the concept of the positive peace, and I believe that that's what we need. We have to move toward this, and I believe that everybody's concerns should be taken into account. Everyone. So if we want to achieve a sustainable peace, it means that those people, though, there are some families who are talking about they lived in modern Armenian territory in 1940s, 1950s, and yes, we were talking with Lara also. When I know that she has also something to say about this. So this shows that this conflict is not limited to Karabakh. It's much wider, and we have to understand that this is about mindset, and that there are families with the certain grievances. We have to address those issues from every side. And I believe that in this context, like in Azerbaijan, the issue about Azerbaijanis from Armenia, that is gaining momentum, and there are a lot of issues about the Armenians from Azerbaijan. I believe that it's time to create a certain type of the mechanism to discuss these concerns also in order to achieve positive peace. It's very important. And there are some positions that Azerbaijan created this institution. There is now a presidential appointed person who is going to deal with the rights and security of Karabakh Armenians. Why there cannot be the same thing done from Armenian side about the Armenian Azerbaijanis? So this is a very important issue. And equality of rights of Karabakh Armenians and Azerbaijanis also, it's very important. So the human rights, it's very important in this context, and I believe that equality in this issue is the one to move toward the peace. But also, there are certain concerns from Azerbaijan side that, geographically, we are situated between Russia, Turkey, and Iran. And I was trying to explain certain issues to our friends back from diplomatic community back in Azerbaijan also, that the concept of peace building and the peace deal that always requires certain degree of ambiguity. Always you should be to some extent ambiguous in order to achieve some peace. So that's very standard. But what Azerbaijan wants now is no ambiguity on the table at all. So there are reasons of that, because being in the region surrounded by Russia, Turkey, and Iran makes you exceptionally vulnerable to certain issues. And I believe that it is the case when standard approach or those formulas that can be applied to peace building cases within Europe, in Balkans, in Northern Ireland, etc., taking them and applying as they are to the South Caucasus. That's, from Azerbaijan perspective, it's a bit not productive. Because if you have some ambiguity and you have EU surrounding you, you can trust that actor, and that actor is going to take care that if there is some negative developments in the future, that actor is going to smooth things down. But when you are in South Caucasus, surrounded by not European countries, the situation is completely different. So that means that any ambiguity, if there is something left not clear, in the future it might turn into the very it can cause a huge disaster. So that's why now Azerbaijan is fully wants a clear lines that this is mine, that is yours, and my rights are fully applied here. And so from that perspective, it creates a lot of misunderstanding between the European actors and Azerbaijan. That why this is certain, let's say, well accepted cases in Europe. When you want to apply it to Azerbaijan, you see quite a resistance from Azerbaijani side on this issue. And of course, like I welcome your ideas about not ignoring Eastern Europe. I would say the Southern Caucasus precisely. In this case, it's a big achievement that for the last 2 years, European Union is engaged in this process. We are very pleased to see European Union's efforts, President Michel's efforts in this case. And there are also, let's say, more EU involvement in the case. That means that more sustainable peace in the future. But at the same time, there are moments like, for example, if we are pleased with the EU presence, why Azerbaijan is not accepting the EU monitoring mission, right? It's in Armenia, but in Azerbaijan. So there are cases that, for example, there are several ways of explaining that. One of the main reasons is Russian presence in Karabakh. The reason is Russians have this motto that wherever Russian flag is raised, that flag should not come down. We see that principle clearly in the case of other Eastern European nations. That Russia says that once more I was in control of most of the Eastern Europe. I withdraw from that territories. Now Western powers came in, and I'm going to fight against that. So that principle in Karabakh, Russia is very much concerned that if, like, leaving that territory is one offense, leaving that territory and being replaced by European or any other mission is totally not acceptable for Russia in this case. So playing it in a very clear way, in a very clever way, so that you can keep balance and that you should not show Russians that once you leave the territory, somebody is going to come and replace you. That's, I would say, right now, that's very important. And when I would say that on the highest level, Azerbaijan was always claiming, Azerbaijan was thanking European Union and calling European Union honest broker. But when it comes to certain issues, these, let's say, the decisions taken, there are quite many specific moments to that issue. And that leads to my final point on the issue that there are a lot. Azerbaijan doesn't know about Europe. Europe doesn't know about Azerbaijan and South Caucasus. Like we know that we know a lot about each other. But there are, when you look deep into the issue, you see so many misunderstandings. You see so many moments that should be explained to each other. And that, especially in the case of Azerbaijan, I would say that, for example, if I go around and ask you, how many of you have been to Baku? And how many times? Then ask, how many of you have been to Yerevan and how many times? I believe that even quantitatively, Yerevan, and I'm not talking about the Tbilisi at all, Yerevan is going to win. So that shows that even, I'm not talking about the qualitatively, but the quantitatively amount of the context that we are having right now, between Europe and Azerbaijan, is very slow, let's say, processes, and the figures are very low. And as a result, we are having significant, I'm using this word a lot, but I believe that that's the spirit of the EU-Azerbaijan relations now. Now it's misunderstanding. So that is why I would say that the expert contacts, at least expert contacts, I'm not talking about the civil society contacts, should be increased. There are so much concerns from Azerbaijan side that needs to be delivered to the European audiences, and there are so much concerns from European side that needs to be delivered to Azerbaijan. For example, yesterday we were discussing so many issues, even this simple discussion with Leo yesterday, that shows that the certain concerns that we are not aware in Azerbaijan, they should be, that concern should be delivered to the public also. And also some concerns from Azerbaijan side. They're always feeling that something is left out there and it's not spoken. So I believe that right now we should work on this issue, and I sincerely believe that the key issue right now is, sorry, but I'm going to say that it's not Armenia-Azerbaijan relations, but EU-Azerbaijan relations. So the issue is that if you have a productive developments in EU-Azerbaijan relations, if you take that relation to a certain level, that's going to help us altogether to make sure that there is like all the concerns about the Karabakh Armenians, they are addressed also. So it makes sure that, once we have EU-Azerbaijan relations developed to a certain level, that's going to help us to make sure that we are, let's say, we're addressing those concerns that we have in each other, and well, that's the basically basis of for everything. So I believe that I used my 15 minutes very well. So if there, but I'm looking forward to the discussions. And again, whatever I told you today, it is this week's truth. There are research projects we started 1 year ago. We cannot finish it and lab because the things are changing so fast. You get a certain amount of opinions, and after 2 months, it's completely different. When I got the received invitation, we were supposed to talk about the humanitarian situation in Karabakh. Then the trucks were delivered. We said, hey, we're going to talk about that the atmosphere is going to be much more positive. The day before, when I was supposed to come here, one day war happened. So there are so many developments taking place right now that this is whatever we talk with you right now. It's this week's truth. Next week, it might be completely different. So thank you, and I hope, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ahmad. Lara, Setrakian, President of APRI Armenia.
Thank you, Leo. I'm very grateful to the Candid Foundation for hosting us today and for the chance to meet Mr. Alili in person. It's important to be together, especially at times like this. And to everyone, happy International Day of Peace. I know that many families in Azerbaijan have suffered over more than 30 years of conflict. They have also experienced displacement and loss. We have a region full of people who have yet to heal from past wars, while we are starting to wage new ones. As Lawrence Broers told me 2 weeks ago, Associate Fellow of Chatham House, every outstanding issue between Armenia and Azerbaijan had and has a potential solution. The key missing step was a genuine and peaceful dialogue between Baku and the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh. And now here we are with a new record of violence against that population. I don't think this is Europe's failure. Azerbaijan skipped over the opportunity to make a true peace with the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh, to engage in the kind of talks that develop trust and lead to a meaningful model of coexistence. Before the military escalation, local Armenian authorities had apparently climbed down from their demands for independence. Another path was possible. An estimated 200 people have died, among them civilians and children, with thousands missing and presumed dead. Azerbaijan has a choice to make: to take steps toward establishing long-term stability in the region, or to perpetuate the cycle of violence and animosity, making the South Caucasus an arena of wars and immense human suffering. So far, President Aliyev has chosen, unfortunately, the second path. Azerbaijan is dangling existential threat and actual human misery over roughly 120,000 people as a way to quickly extract political concessions. And it's working. After one intense day of shelling and 9 months of food deprivation, Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh capitulated on issues we expected to see at the negotiating table: Now, I'm not here to speak for the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh. They should have the ability to do that themselves and the opportunity to do that themselves. But as a political analyst, I do believe it's important to convey what we have seen and also accounted for through third-party validation. The talks today in Azerbaijan are coming at tremendous human cost, with civilians as the bargaining chips. When children went to sleep in underground bunkers on Tuesday night to escape the shelling, they went down there very, very hungry. When casualties mounted, there were very few medical supplies. The entire blockade for 9 months, it turned out, was softening the target. So it was an assured win. Again, as Lawrence Flores put it earlier as we spoke about this, Azerbaijan has had a very strong commitment to coercive tactics, and it has been itching to do this for some time. I believe it's fairly clear at this point that an attempt at ethnic cleansing is underway, if not already. Life has been made unbearable for the Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh. They face hunger and bombardment if they stay in their ancestral homes. And a government in Baku that's talking about integrating them is the one doing it. So what are they to make of that? We expect people to see people flee as soon as they can. That is what we are hearing from people on the ground. They weren't rushing to leave before this operation began or before the beginning of the blockade on December 12th. So it is clearly a coerced departure. There are now reports, although of course the situation is very fluid, that men between the ages of 16 and 65 are not allowed to evacuate from Nagorno-Karabakh. I'll hold other things that I have heard but cannot yet verify. Whether the goal is to depopulate Nagorno-Karabakh of Armenians or to leave a small compliant group as a showpiece for international observers, both the means and the ends of these operations are a far cry from peaceful diplomacy. At the think tank where I work, we don't take a position on what the end result of the political or diplomatic process should be. We simply take a position that it should be. We strongly believe that Armenians and Azerbaijanis should have a dynamic that is set by dialogue, genuine diplomacy, and real negotiations, not the constant threat of force and the regular use thereof, with one party constantly threatening to eat the other for lunch. What we have now legitimizes the use of force and rewards it. As one Azerbaijani expert told my colleague, Armenia will sign the deal we want with or without a bloody nose. That is the definition of bullying. It is a mafia tactic. It is a threat of force as a negotiating tactic. It puts the region on track for continued turmoil. There is no way to get sustainable peace on that path. And it begs the question, what does Azerbaijan want? A stable South Caucasus living by a rules-based international order? Or an Azerbaijan that uses its military and resource advantage to pulverize Armenia or threaten to do so every time Baku has a new demand? And its demands tend to grow. That is part of the reason this week is different than last. So where do we go from here? The version where Azerbaijan constantly pulverizes Armenia will create a new level of desperation, instability, and conflict in which Russia will happily continue to be the referee. How do we make the best of a bottomed-out situation that we appear to be in at the moment? First, we need to understand what this week has wrought. Second, we need to be aware of what is likely ahead. And third, we need to understand the role of Europe, the thesis of Europe's participation and Germany's in the South Caucasus. What is the meaningful, achievable path to stability in the region? So first, our offerings, our analysis of what this week has wrought, the fallout of Azerbaijan's military offensive on Nagorno-Karabakh. Again, since the end of the 2020 war, in particular, Baku has been able to use its military advantage to change facts on the ground while negotiating or instead of negotiating through diplomatic channels. It has regularly chosen to break away from negotiations or violate agreements when it loses patience or wants to escalate its demands. This changes things quickly. It sets a dangerous formula that has now become a very clear pattern. It has also shattered the sense that there's a good faith negotiating partner in Baku.
I feel very sad to say that because I do hope there's room for genuine diplomacy and for President Aliyev to be the statesman that we need him to be. But for the time being, Baku's calculation is that it is better off waging war to get whatever it wants than signing a ceasefire deal that codifies those gains. It's a strategy of constant escalation, and it is working. What message and what lesson does that send to other countries who have the power to overpower their neighbor? Azerbaijan has also set a pattern of completely ignoring the calls of mediators and international bodies. 5 days before the operation began, the US State Department said, quote, "The United States will not countenance any action or effort to ethnically cleanse or commit other atrocities against the Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh. We have also made it abundantly clear that the use of force is not acceptable." And it happened 5 days later. Armenians are in a state of shock and disarray. The events of the past 3 days have significantly weakened Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and created a real risk of political turmoil in Armenia. Pashinyan had invested a great deal in the peace process with Azerbaijan and Turkey on the premise and convincing the Armenian people that it would work, that it was a good idea, the correct path. He also put a good deal of faith in the November 2020 ceasefire statement, the first point of which was the cessation of hostilities around Nagorno-Karabakh. To the Armenian population, this now seems like folly. The 2020 ceasefire agreement has been stripped of its power, effectively shredded by Tuesday's offensive. This leaves a security vacuum. But it also pushes other parts of the deal, like the opening of transit and economic links between Azerbaijan and Armenia, off the table. It also cancels the clause about connectivity links across Armenia, a land bridge that is commonly referred to as the Zangezur corridor connecting Azerbaijan and Turkey, a long-held aim for those two countries. But that assurance, that discussion of connectivity links was all part of a comprehensive peace agreement that was signed on November 9th, 2020, and now has been negated by Azerbaijan. Is Armenia still going to be expected to deliver on other elements of that document when both Azerbaijan and Turkey have backed the use of force and celebrated it, shredding both the text and the spirit of the 2020 ceasefire? Or is it going to be a pretext for additional military action by Azerbaijan to claim the Zangezur corridor by force, which has been suggested by state officials in various comments? Turkey, Russia, and Azerbaijan have established a dark pattern of geopolitical collaboration at Armenia's expense. Just after the start of Tuesday's assault on Nagorno-Karabakh, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev issued a statement, posted one, saying that Armenia would be punished effectively for its growing collaboration with the West, and implying that the loss of territory and even sovereignty was the price that Armenia would pay for its flirtations with the West. It is a strange and dark September in the South Caucasus, but this is where we are. Moving on to the second frame, we ought to examine an awareness of what's likely ahead, which will be a vital test of how Germany, the EU, and the US, and their readiness to support stability and international norms and democratic values in the region will lead us. First, we are extremely likely to see tremendous humanitarian upheaval. It could be a medium-sized humanitarian crisis if the situation immediately settles down and a massive amount of aid arrives to the people of Nagorno-Karabakh. Or it could be a large-size humanitarian crisis if the fallout from the military operation prevents people from getting food and water, which we are hearing reports of quite a lot, or if the offensive resumes, or any combination of these things. Some eyewitnesses say that shelling continued even after Armenians agreed to meet the terms Baku had set and agreed to meet for talks. Again, I'm not on the ground, but we're hearing this quite credibly. There have also been reports of gunfire across the border into territorial Armenia and to Sotka. Let's close this chapter. Let's figure out how to make it rational or even advantageous, appealing for everyone involved to see peace through genuine diplomatic engagement as the best option. The patterns of behavior are not currently set in that direction, but with real commitment from the mediators and a lot more committed action, we can find a peaceful way forward. Thank you.
Lara Setrakian, thank you so much. So I believe Michael Roth has already stayed longer than we thought. Thank you for that. Thank you for carving out that much time out of your schedule in this busy week. Before you leave, do you want to address?
I just wanted to express my gratitude again. I'm very moved by this very honest analysis. Special thanks to Ahmad and Lara. I'm very glad that you discuss about Germany's role in the region, but I would like to invite you to take also into account that the EU's role is going to become more important. I know the expectations traditionally, if it comes to Germany, are extremely high because we are a strong country, we are in the very heart of the European Union, we're the biggest country, that's true. But our engagement must be embedded in an EU strategy, in a very comprehensive approach. And that highlights how challenging it is sometimes, because the European Union is a very diverse union with different approaches, different interests. But this is our obligation to do our utmost best to bring all these different approaches, perceptions together. This is the only chance, because I can't expect more engagement from the United States of America. I don't want to speculate about the outcome of the next presidential elections, but I think the message is crystal clear. And this is not a Trump message or a Biden message. This was also the Obama's best message. Europe, take more responsibility for your own security interest in Europe. And that means also in Eastern Europe, also the South Caucasus. That's crystal clear. Maybe I was not clear in this point. I would like to emphasize it again. For me, Nagorno-Karabakh belongs to Azerbaijan. And that's why I'm one of the biggest fans of Prime Minister Pashinyan. Because for the very first time, he recognized this bitter reality. And I know he's extremely under pressure by the diaspora, for instance. I know that diaspora, for many people in this country, it's a painful situation to recognize this reality. But it doesn't mean that you can solve this problem with military aggression. And that's why I expect a clear message from my Chancellor and from the EU institutions. Ethnic cleansing is an absolute no-go. It's an absolute no-go. We have to accept in the Western Balkans, in South Caucasus, also in the European Union, that the future of our societies lies in a multi-ethnic, multi-religious and multicultural composition. And we cannot solve problems with ethnic cleansing. And I don't say this here. I visited last week Kosovo and North Macedonia, and I know how the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina is. For many nationalistic politicians, ethnic cleansing is a very, very attractive option, and we cannot accept this. So, what can we do? First, this is not the time for strengthening the economic cooperation with Azerbaijan. Secondly, we need a clear signal to the people in Armenia. That means visa liberalization as soon as possible. We need a new civilian mission with a more broader basis. And I very much hope that also the partners in Azerbaijan accept that we need a mission which will be accepted from both sides, which is more ambitious. I don't want to go into the details. And we have to strengthen the economic and security cooperation in the region, because this is the bitter truth. The key actors in the regions are Turkey and Russia, and maybe Iran. And sorry, as an ordinary politician, I don't trust Iran. This is one of the most evil countries worldwide. I don't trust Russia at all. And we have serious problem if it comes to security and democracy with Turkey. That is the reality. And my wish is that you take a contribution for improving this reality, to build up a bright future for this region based on trust, confidence, and recognition of the reality. Thank you so much, and unfortunately, because the parliament is on session, I have to leave now, but I will come back soon, and if you prefer to talk with us more in a more private situation, I also respect this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael Wood, Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee in German Bundestag. So, do you want to respond briefly to this, Ahmad? And then afterwards, I will open the floor to questions.
Yeah, the elephant in the room is about the ethnic cleansing, and that was the issue that I mentioned the first time. And again, the Azerbaijani society built up. It's very multicultural, and it's not the result of some social and political engineering. The geography itself made it to be multicultural, because in Caucasus you have mountains, and on top of the one mountain you have one ethnic group. As a result, you have, like the geography giving that you are multicultural, and that the history made sure that we know how to deal with the issue. So this is very multicultural. So if the government institutions, they get an experience about ethnic cleansing, like the once there is some kind of institutional experience, that's not going to stop there. So that's my continue, and that build up is not going to be sustainable. So Azerbaijan recognized that fact. So once you do something, that might destroy your own society. So any ethnic cleansing or anything like that, it's totally against the structural build-up of Azerbaijan, and in the future, now and in the future. So I believe that that's, again, when discussing the expert community, this kind of issues, there are the issues that are well discussed. For example, this issue. There are issues that are not well discussed, but needs to be discussed. For example, transitional justice, what to do with the people with the war crimes. So there are, I believe that now it's time to dive into the most sensitive issues and discuss them in a most rational way possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. Lara. Please keep it to 2 minutes as well.
I don't have much to add. I think, I do think it's strange when Armenia is called a mono-ethnic society, because I know Yazidis who take refuge and love their home in Armenia. I know Malikans, Assyrians, a growing number of Indians. So the country is actually not only multicultural, but very much a refuge for people who tend to experience genocide in other places. The issues between Armenia and Azerbaijan have to do with the fear of atrocities, which have unfortunately happened. I made a conscious choice. I listened to Mr. Hikmet Hajiev's interview on CNN. There's a lot to say in that respect, but I didn't want to spend my time on that, and very few minutes here to share other perspectives. But I will say that, the Armenian government, and I'm not there to verify this, but Russians and others have offered, and there are many mechanisms to verify this, had said that it had withdrawn its forces from Azerbaijan many months ago. The fighting force that remained in Nagorno-Karabakh, by and large, were the people of Nagorno-Karabakh who feared atrocities and ethnic cleansing. A very good way to defuse that would have been to engage in talks and convince them that there will not be atrocities or ethnic cleansing. Unfortunately, incidents like Tuesday reinforce the fear that when you put Azerbaijanis and Armenians together, there will be conflict and there will be suffering. But again, I think, when you talk about creating multicultural societies, you do have to overcome a long legacy of distrust and violence and loss and suffering, whether that's the destruction of churches and monuments, or on the Azerbaijani side, claims of destruction of mosques and other heritage items. These are important conversations, but nothing I can see had no way out, or would have suggested that the path forward was a massive aerial bombardment of Nagorno-Karabakh on Tuesday. So I don't think, that the issues on the table justified what we saw, and frankly are harder to solve now because of it. But there's always a path forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So yes, thank you for all of you to be here. Thank you especially to the two ambassadors, Mr. Inibarian and Mr. Agayev, who came to this event as well, especially because this is also a special day in Armenia. It's Armenian Day of Independence. So I think, yeah, it's fair to say that you could have imagined better ways to spend this day. So I really appreciate that you are here. I really appreciate that you are here as well. So I would like to give the floor to you first for brief statements of, please keep it to 3 minutes if possible, and then we'll collect more questions. I believe that we have to end the session already in half an hour at 10:30. So yes, please keep it short. Thank you.
Thank you, and let me join thanking other speakers as well and the organizers of this event. I think it's very important that experts, especially independent experts, gather to discuss the issues, and the question of today, what Germany can do, what is the role of the Germany, is a very important issue, and it's a very wider issue, because the elephant in the room is actually what will be in the future, and how we are going to continue this process we have started with Azerbaijan. I'm not going to comment on the atrocities yesterday. I think the international community demonstrated its clear ability to condemn what was happening yesterday. I think we need also independent organizations who will go to Nagorno-Karabakh and start investigations, because we receive news which I cannot confirm right now. We need an investigation in the future for sure. Regarding ethnic cleansing, I think here the international community is also very clear, and the government of the Republic of Armenia is very clear. This is something we cannot afford. It will be a crime against humanity. I think here is we need also to see clear acts from the international community, including the European Union and including Germany. Regarding the question of today's, and I'm going to end with it, Armenia has its clear positions, of course. We have seen that the negotiations process between Armenia and Azerbaijan, mediated by the European Union, we call it the Charles Michel format, have not been very effectively in past months. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the atrocities yesterday. So the role of Germany, as we understand it, and I'm also delighted to hear what you are thinking about the role of Germany, is to strengthen the European Union's format, because soft power, which has the EU, has not demonstrated its ability to solve the conflict, and soft power is not the right methodology to speak with some countries, I think. And I'm going to finish again by thanking you, and I would especially like to also hear the opinion of distinguished participants of this table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Agayev.
Thank you very much for this kind invitation to be part of this interesting program. I've listened with great attention to both distinguished speakers, and I thank them both. And also to Michel Roth, whom I've met several times. This is, of course, very interesting timing, also timing-wise, as Mr. Ahmad Alili mentioned. Right now, the talks are happening in Yerevan, and I'm getting all this notification that I hope they will be successful and leading to the full reintegration of Karabakh Armenians into all spheres of Azerbaijani life in the Republic of Azerbaijan, under our constitution and under our international commitments for minority protection. Azerbaijani president yesterday made an address to the people of Azerbaijan, and he said that Armenians living in Karabakh are our citizens, and they will enjoy all rights educational, religious, cultural, municipal, electoral, and other rights within Azerbaijan as Azerbaijani citizens, and their life will get much better. He also said, and if you decide to come to Azerbaijan, you can see with your own eyes how Azerbaijan now is rebuilding the entire liberated areas, massively investing in these areas, creating new villages, cities, and the same can be done in Khankendi, in Khojavend, in Askeran, and other cities and villages in Karabakh, where Armenians are living. So that's our policy, that's our plan, and today we are there in Yevlakh to discuss it directly, without mediators, directly with our future Armenian citizens. But of course, we are looking forward. We want to build a peaceful future with Armenia, and I think we are much closer to peace than ever before. And I would say, happy Independence Day to Armenia today, and we appreciate, of course, Armenia's very statesmanlike position during the last few days, that Armenia, how Armenia has behaved, and we have expressed officially also our appreciation for that. And I think that will allow us, and is giving us hope for the successful continuation of the peace negotiations, not directly with Armenia, and establishing peace. Of course, we have our own grievances, and our distinguished speaker representing the Armenian side has spoken about all the grievances on the Armenian side, but we have also our grievances as well, and we should also discuss that as well. Like, if 1 million Azerbaijanis were subjected to genocide by Armenia, and then our lands were occupied for 30 years. Every single house, every single village, every single city formerly populated by Azerbaijanis were completely destroyed, not in wartime, after the ceasefire, for 30 years systematically, including under Mr. Pashinyan's time. So then you see all these areas, your heart is breaking. My house was also destroyed, by the way. So this is this situation there. It's a very tragic situation. But now we are rebuilding these areas and trying to bring back those displaced Azerbaijanis. 2,000 have been already returned, and we have a plan to return 8,000 more by the end of the year. So this was a very significant human rights issue that Azerbaijan is implementing. And of course, landmines. 1 million landmines are still on our territory, and we are removing these landmines without any substantial help from the international community. So, of course, our distinguished chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee of Bundestag has spoken about how Azerbaijan should do this, should do that. But when Ukraine is now trying to liberate its occupied areas from occupation, and it's all right. Europe and the West is helping with weapons and arms even Ukraine to do that, to restore its territorial integrity. When Azerbaijan wants to do it, it's wrong. That's absolutely unacceptable. So I think that also shows double standards, double duplicity and hypocrisy. He said, what should EU and Germany do? I would say, what should EU and Germany not do? Not support one side completely against the other, giving the one side false hopes, which can then lead to more calamities, more crises. EU now should support neutrally the peace process as it has done, and continue to do so. Because all these calls about sanctions, harsh actions, we haven't seen these calls about these harsh actions when Armenia was occupying our lands and was displacing all these Azerbaijanis from their lands. So that's why now it's time for calm. I think we are closer than ever before to peace between our two nations, a long overdue peace between our two nations. And the one thing about 10,000 Armenian soldiers in Karabakh, Armenia was denying to have 10,000 soldiers in Karabakh for a long time, but now Armenians in Karabakh themselves have admitted that there are Armenian armed forces on the territory of Karabakh, and they were terrorizing our civilians. That's why we have to take this action. So, wrapping up, my final message is, let's concentrate now on the reintegration of Karabakh Armenians as Azerbaijani citizens and the peace with Armenia, between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think, we have roughly 20 minutes, so I think we'll have a round of questions now. I saw Daniel Gerlach, I saw Daniel Den Böhmer, I saw you, I saw you, I saw you as well. Okay, so anyone else? So we have these 5 for now. Okay, then 6. Okay, thank you. 7. Okay. So then Daniel Gerlach.
Thank you very much. For someone who is, I'm Daniel Gerlach, I'm the director of the Candid Foundation and Leo's partner. I'm working on Middle Eastern affairs and not on the South Caucasus. And I can tell you that for people who are focusing on the Middle East, it is quite peculiar to follow the discussions on the South Caucasus, because you see that people have a very pragmatic, very instrumental, sometimes very mercantile approach toward peace, which is impressive and at the same time shocking. So it's a privilege to have experts in the room and at the same time representatives of the respective governments in such a tense situation. It is something hard to imagine in a Middle Eastern context. So apparently peace and dialogue are possible, but my question is mainly to you, Ahmad. We have a strategic embarrassment here. As Mr. Roth said, the Europeans, of course, they can gain and they can benefit from peace in the region. At the same time, there is like strong economic ties with Azerbaijan and a lot to gain from improvement of bilateral relations with Azerbaijan. At the same time, there's a strong geopolitical and also moral interest to keep a balance and to support Armenia. Now, what Lara says is that this is not only about Karabakh. Like, if I understand you correctly, Lara, you believe that the next demand is already on the horizon, and that is a very, very important issue to address. Because if that's the case, then the only solution for the Europeans is not dialogue, but deterrence, military support, buttressing the Armenian military capabilities in order to deter the next military move. So we have the choice of supporting dialogue and finding a mechanism of peace building in the region. Now that the Karabakh issue is only one, but from the Azerbaijani perspective, the main issue, but only one issue. Or the choice of trying to keep a military or try to produce some sort of a military balance in the region in order to avoid further conflict through deterrence. What can you do and what can you say in order, let's say, to build confidence and to convince the Europeans that it is not only, that Karabakh is not only one step and the next demand is already on the plate, but that this is about international law, about putting an end to ambiguities and re-establishing Azerbaijani territorial integrity.
Can I answer?
I think due to lack of time, we have to collect all questions and then we have time to answer. Daniel Den from Beit.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I also wanted to sort of take the cue of Daniel Gerlach's question. I wonder, Ahmad, what you think, what's the danger of this conflict continuing into South Armenia and towards Nakhichevan or Nakhchivan? The second question I had to both of you said the EU should play a role there, but it's not that the Europeans haven't played a role in the past, which it might be one of the tragedies of this case. So I wonder from both of you, Ahmad and Lara, what are the mistakes the Europeans made when a few years back they still thought they were in the driving seat? What were the mistakes that should be avoided in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Yerevan. I'm with the Open Society Foundations based here in Berlin, and my response will be directly to the question what the EU, Germany potentially should do in this moment. I would argue that currently not just EU's interests are on the table, but also its moral compass is at stake. You know, it didn't really have to come to this, as Lara said. This latest round of violence was completely unnecessary and at such a cost. You choke someone for months and starve them and then you fire at them. It's just not civilized. It's not 21st century. Since 2020 war, the world has yet to see some generosity, some victor's stance from President Aliyev. This is absent. I think instead we're seeing huge and more drive for violence, threats, solving solutions only through force. This is a sad example to the rest of the world, unfortunately. EU has things to say and EU has things to do. I think it's time to really become more serious about peace. But not just to say words which are then becoming broken promises, but to really follow up and show Armenians, how do you expect Armenian side to go on with peace talks under current circumstances? We need to see some action. The ball is with President Aliyev at the moment. Now, in terms of concretely what the EU could do, I think far too long EU played the role of a simple facilitator, right? Playing the neutral game. And I think that was wrong, because when you enter this game, there are rules. And when one side doesn't play with the rules, you have to do something about it and not hide and try to mask behind nice words. It doesn't work. It creates only impunity, and the day before yesterday's actions were a clear demonstration of that. So if the EU is serious about this, it needs to take a bolder step. I think what happened the day before yesterday deserved individual sanctions against military leadership who was behind this attack. Because again, civilians didn't need to die, children didn't need to die. I would suggest that there has to be an immediate call for all humanitarian corridors to be open, because people are still starving there. Let's not forget that.
Yerevan?
There has to, I'm just going through three more issues and then I'll finish.
Please keep
UN could potentially play a role. It has played a role because I think, do we want Russian peacekeepers to remain there? Probably not. I think we need to make clear that Armenia's sovereignty is a red line here, because let's remember there is still parts of Armenia that are under occupation of Azeri military. It's a fact. And also, let's make sure that we understand the question of so-called Zangezur corridor is in the air. A few days ago, Telegraph reported military vehicles of Azerbaijan with signs on them, kind of these Russian Z-type signs, but reverse A, which one way to interpret is the corridor. What does that mean? And let's make sure that we understand that here Russia and Azerbaijan interests align, because Russia is now desperate to create a coup in Armenia and get rid of Pashinyan, put its puppets. More EU, less Russia in the region would benefit everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Yerevan. Please.
I'm Jonathan Spangberg, a EU citizen. I'm a German citizen and the chairman of the Armenian community, or the Central Council of the Armenians in Germany. I want to address what can Europe do, what can Germany do, because this is the theme today. Imminently now, Germany should take a clear stand and clearly state what Azerbaijan is doing against the people of Artsakh, the crimes. Germany can commission an investigation at the criminal court of at the International Criminal Court to investigate this. These steps should be taken now. When before 2 months we met as a European Armenian delegation of European citizens with representatives at the EU in Brussels, we clearly asked what would the EU do if certain scenarios happen. One of these scenarios is happening now. And we said, when will the European Union, the responsibles, act on, for example, sanctioning Azerbaijan on its genocidal policy. After these 9 months of starvation policy and this bombardment of the 2 days, it is crystal clear that they want to expel the living population. And this should be very clearly stated. This is a thing which, if today, for example, the heads of states of the European Union say this clearly, this will already have a big impact. And the European Parliament has adopted a resolution before a few months saying that if the Lachin corridor is not opened, Europe should go for sanctioning Azerbaijan. Nothing happened. Now, if the European Union wants to have or keep the credibility and really believes in a long peace solution, then it must say the things as they are. This is very important at this stage, because all other things will lead to ethnic cleansing, and this means that there will be radicalization, and this radicalization will come to Europe. I grew up in the Middle East and know what it means if promises are not whole. So Germany has an important thing to do. It has to firstly say what's happening now, and it has to go to sanction Azerbaijan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Ingura.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I just want to say that if Europe wants to be heard in Azerbaijan or in Europe, it has to also has to confess its neglecting of Armenian war crimes over decades. Otherwise, it will be not heard in Azerbaijan. It's just ignoring. It will be ignored. And I want also suggest that maybe international water management issues should be also one of points at the agenda. Transboundary water management issues are very important and has many conflict and cooperation potential. So maybe it's also an issue for EU and German foreign policy in Caucasus.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks for this event. I mean, when we speak about the strategy of Germany and the EU today, what we can say, I mean, what we see that actually failed. You know, so you have to think about what you want, how you can actually deal with this situation now. As there is armed forces, it's always the sign, I mean, the most obvious sign that things did not go well. You know, we want to live in a world of peace. We have the United Nations, we have ideals, we have a moral. You know, and then this is where we have to work how to prevent all this and how we actually keep our promises, as we said. And so what we see at the moment, and not just in Karabakh, but like in many places of the world, is that the right of the stronger seems to prevail. And is this something we want, or is this not escalating situations in Ukraine, in Karabakh, in many places, and we can see from Turkey invading Syria. I think this needs deep thinking of Germany and the European Union and the United Nations too. One question I have: has anybody thought about speaking not just about the people of Karabakh, but also with them? There is a republic, but actually nobody. You know, we always speak about them, and there's war on them, but no one actually speaks with them. Thank you.
And can you please mention your name as well?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Roman Kühn. I'm the director of the Society of Threatened Peoples. Thank you.
Thank you. Then the two last ones, Riksa person from DED and Nurcin Ali from the Azerbaijani Embassy Berlin.
Perfect. Thank you. First of all, thank you all for being here today. I think it's a good sign that you two are sitting next to each other, not only on the International Day of Peace. Yet I
shared chocolate.
I brought chocolate.
Okay,
We shared chocolate.
well, even better. Yet I have two questions concerning Azerbaijan. You talked about guaranteeing and respecting and protecting human rights also in the region of Karabakh, which I think is the most important issue at this point. And you, Mr. Ambassador, talked about being closer to peace than ever before. How is this peace and the guarantee of respecting human rights sustainable when Azerbaijan is sending tanks into a region which is like where humanitarian crisis is happening at the moment, where 60,000 people are living? So how is this a trust-building measure to guarantee peace, also not only now to freeze this conflict, but also in the next decades even? Thank you.
Thank you. So for everyone who was not heard clearly, it was two questions I think raised. One was, why is there a perceived double standard in treatment of separatist movements regarding Nagorno-Karabakh in the West, and the other one was regarding the sincerity of Armenia to the peace process. I got one very last one that I would like to accept, Matthias-Erzberger from Baku Foundation. And then
thank you so much. I would like to thank to both panelists for their interesting and sober analysis. I totally understand even the emotions behind their speeches. It's not understandable in this current situation. I hope all, since we are just questioning what the Western European Unions or Germany should do, or other experts, I think the best thing would be to be sober, not to be more than Armenian and more than Azerbaijanis in this field. I would say maybe it sounds a little bit harsh, but I think since I have hundreds of Armenian friends as a peace activist, I really feel these sad processes. When I have just one question to Lara. Since we have been talking about what Azerbaijan should do, yeah, it's totally normal, because as a winning part in the field, we understand that the ball is on Azerbaijan's side, especially related to the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh. I would love to hear, but since I didn't hear, that's why I'm asking this question. What Armenia had to do before the 2020 war, after the 2020 war, because as an IDP from Karabakh, I would never ever like to see any single Armenian to leave, experience what I and my family experienced, you know? And it's really hurting as a human being. Yes, I'm original Azerbaijani, but I don't care about my nationality. This is the human being. And what can Armenia, what can the Karabakh leaders, Armenian leaders in Karabakh can do? Let's not just say that, this is, take the responsibility out of our shoulders, yeah? We are from Armenia, we can't speak on their behalf. But all experts speak on behalf of Azerbaijan or Armenia, even the Western experts. Let's also talk about their own behalf. Let's see, we have to see, yes, we can talk a lot of things and just say that, let's do sanctions, unrealistic things. It's not gonna help. Arsen is not gonna get benefit from this, and Ali will not get benefit from this in the field. Let's be realistic, and thank you so much.
Bakia, thank you very much. So now I would, who wants to go first?
As you wish.
Sure, I can.
Ahmad. Okay.
So there are several questions that, and most of the, several
We'll end
questions.
a little bit later.
I grouped them, I tried to group them, address those issues, and definitely some of them are addressed to the government officials, not in the embassy here, but the government officials should answer those issues. So we'll try to expose the side of the issues that the civil society knows, right? So regarding the any claims toward Armenia in the future, so it's going to be continuing. I would say that, so if we're talking about the zenith corridor, and there will be that, I believe that President Aliyev last year, it was actually exactly September, November, he said about the Latvian role, try to make them equal. And it meant that once you establish, and that back in Azerbaijan wanted, like this diplomatic means, establish border checkpoint. So now looking back, frankly speaking, you see that so many opportunities were missed. So those things that they unilaterally were established and that now there is a no go back could be established through diplomatic means, and that could be beneficial to everyone. So these are the missed opportunities, frankly speaking. But regarding that, and Azerbaijan, I would say, very much interested that it controls its own borders, as I told you, like the clear lines. Is there any ambiguity in the region? That's the recipe for the future disaster. South Caucasus is not, it's not the middle of Europe. You are surrounded by Russia, Iran, and Turkey, and like any geopolitical rivalry between them, that's going to show itself. And any ambiguity can be very disastrous. So for Azerbaijan, like I have my border checkpoint here, and you have there, so that's okay. And the transport links with respect to Armenian sovereignty, I believe that is purely in Azerbaijan interest. But what about Russian interest in this issue? It's not secret like that 2016 Lavrov plan, the main element of that was like the return of the territories, it should have been like the peace deal, but in reality they wanted to give up like some territories to be back as opposed to this connection can be, this logistical connection can be established. So what are you going to do with Russia? And Turkey also. There is a need, strong need for that railways to be established there, and they want to have their own say on the issue. So yes, Azerbaijan and Azerbaijan name is on the front page, and it should be. But even like Azerbaijan says that I don't need that, and hypothetically says that I don't need that, I'm going to use. What are you going to do with Russia and Turkey in this case? I believe when Iran protests, it's not protest against Azerbaijan, it's about that players in the field. So this is like the blaming Azerbaijan that for that, like that's the continuation of the claim. I don't find it fair. So there is a much bigger interest involved in this issue, and let's see how it's going to develop in the future. But I believe that, you know, it's a bit non-standard approach to the issue, but I believe that but we're starting to shift another project. It's about talking about economic perspectives. In one of the meetings, we were discussing about the possible gas line toward Armenia, how Azerbaijan and Armenia can benefit from that. And then suddenly for ourselves, we understood that Armenia has all the rights over all existing pipelines and future possible pipelines that can be built in the region. So whatever you are going to build through Armenia is going to automatically belong to Russia. So it was so ironic that we discovered for ourselves that during the expert discussions that the only way that can be excluded from that rule if you grant certain exclusive rights to that line and then make the pipeline pass that, because that's the only way Russia is not going to own that pipeline. So it's a highly surrealistic reality, but this is it. So how we are going to talk in the future. So that's why the Russian interest in this place, the Turkish interest in this link. So that's why, like, if there is any future developments in this regard, I wouldn't say, I would not label it at Azerbaijan's continuing claims. So there are other, like, if Azerbaijan hypothetically withdraws from that, there is, like the Russia 2016 Lavrov plan, the essence of that was establishment of that corridor. So it's very, very nuanced moment that we have to take into account. What are the mistakes that Europe makes? This is a very interesting question, like that I believe, what can be done different? So there are so many issues that we can. Look, the main issue is that Europe was absent from the region, and I have to say this word, there was like a very minor engagement with the region. And suddenly there was quite a, let's say, attempt to engage with all spheres, and that's good. That's the best European Union should do. But suddenly you had information vacuum. You have a minor engagement, and you suddenly try to gain. So that's what I'm talking about, the misunderstanding a lot. So this is the real problem between the EU, Azerbaijan, in the region. So there is a need to raise the expertise about Europe in Azerbaijan and about Azerbaijan in Europe. If we don't do that, we're going to face a lot of problems in the future. So that's why, whatever the missteps were there, it's very normal, I would say that. Because, again, you had a very minor engagement, you suddenly try to have quite a, geopolitical engagement with that level, and try to solve that issue. So whatever the problems were, they were it was expected. But there's certain issues that, for example, the specific issues that we have to take into account also. For example, now in Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan highly frustrated with how the European monitoring mission in Armenia and it got developed. So what makes Azerbaijan really frustrated is that there were agreement about the 2 months length mission in Armenia, and Azerbaijan gave agreement to that, and was expected to show that that's the, just to inform the European decision makers what's happening on the ground. And suddenly that sensitive issue, and it was very sensitive that Azerbaijan agreed on that, suddenly that sensitive issue was prolonged to 2 years, and I would say that Azerbaijan was not asked. Like Azerbaijan was shouting that it's not happy about that, but it was ignored. So I would say that up to that moment, many people in Azerbaijan, especially high-profile people, diplomats, depending on Matviev, one of the most repeated words about EU was EU being honest broker. And suddenly you see that usage of that word, like the going down. Or now I really, very really, but up to that moment there were quite many frequent references to that point. So again, now like the civil society level, we wanted to engage on certain sensitive projects, and we said no, we cannot do that. So yeah, what? Everybody's going to win from that. He said yes, this is the beginning, but what's going to come after? So because there was agreement for 2 months length project, and then suddenly it got prolonged. Again, I'm not talking about not asking Azerbaijan. I'm talking about Azerbaijan protesting, strongly protesting, and this issue was ignored. Or there are several statements that Azerbaijan would want to avoid, certain issues. So there is this minor but very important issues that creates a bit, let's say, misunderstanding. Again, that word, but this is the reality. So there are other issues like that, but I feel that I'm abusing my stuff. I'm so sorry about it. But so that's why I'm going to stop there. And if we start talking all of those issues, I believe that we are going to need another 2 hours.
We should. We should have.
So that's why, I believe that in the future we can have. I expect that with the increased role of EU and Germany, this kind of engagement with the local experts are going to be much more, and that we are going to be able to share much more opinion with you. But I'm going to stop here and not to abuse my sorry.
I appreciate it. There's a lot to cover, and I'll try to be brief.
Yes.
So, to the question of whether Azerbaijan is eyeing the Zangezur corridor or additional territorial or expansion of the conflict, President Erdogan of Turkey was very clear at the UN on Tuesday that he expects the delivery of the Zangezur corridor by Armenia. If you follow the rhetoric from Azerbaijan, the Zangezur corridor, that has been a very faithful predictor of future action.
President Erdogan, not President Ali.
President Erdogan of Turkey, who has been very much in step with President Aliyev of Azerbaijan on demanding Zangezur corridor, and also Turkey has been a part of the conflict in many ways, of which the Zangezur corridor is a demand in the ceasefire agreement.
So it's been a pretty good predictor. Rhetoric has been a pretty good predictor. Domestic rhetoric has been a very good predictor of where the conflict goes next. Since September of last year, after Armenia's prime minister recognized the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, President Aliyev in Azerbaijan has very publicly endorsed the profile raising of the Western Azerbaijan community, which essentially lays claim to parts of territorial Armenia, including the capital Yerevan. Recent news reports on Baku TV showed the weather forecast in Western Azerbaijan with Armenian cities using their Azerbaijani names. So these do tend to be leading indicators of an expansion of justification, trigger, pretext for future conflict. And that's more of a trend than it is an emotional response for me. This is what tends to happen before these things escalate. There has been very real military buildup by Azerbaijan since September 1st, certainly the early weeks of September. So that is very, very easy to find. In terms of lessons for the EU is a relatively new entrant in diplomacy. I mean, that's fine. I mean, I think that was something that happened after the Ukraine war, when it was clear that outsourcing this to Russia was not going to work well. In the vacuum of the 2020 war, Russia had primarily been the fulcrum upon which the negotiations and the process was going forward. And I think after the Ukraine war and also after the attacks on Armenia's soil in September, we saw a lot more Western engagement. So it's still very early. I think it has made a very positive difference. If there are lessons to be learned, it's probably from the OSCE Minsk group. We had a great panel. I was on a panel with Thomas Greminger, who's now at the Geneva Center for Security in Switzerland. I think there are really good lessons to be learned from the longer arc of European efforts. I do sense sometimes that it appears to be Azerbaijan's general approach to discourage more engagement from the EU and the West. And that includes, frankly, several talking points that we've heard today. I think the horse trading between Russia, Turkey, and Azerbaijan is going very well in terms of the exchange of interests. Erdogan, before the Nagorno-Karabakh issue has essentially collapsed in the past week, but before that he suggested three-way talks or four-way talks, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Russia, Armenia. It reminded me a lot of the Astana process with Syria, breaking away from the mainstream or from international or Western observation to launch something that really, again, becomes about the extraction of interests by regional powers than anything that's necessarily good for people on the ground. So that's what I've noticed, is that there's points in that direction. I may be mistaken, but the presence and the extension of the EU monitoring mission is an agreement between the EU and Armenia on Armenia's territorial lands. So, I think that is certainly something that can be extended if the two parties agree to it. I understand completely that it creates a difficult rhetoric in Azerbaijan, but that basically presupposes that anything Azerbaijan doesn't like in terms of the results or the path of diplomacy, it's going to use as a pretext to say you're not an honest broker. So where does that leave us? If you don't like it and you make noise, it can't be done. So that ties the hands of those who are trying to produce something meaningful or long form. And I know that Azerbaijan is a controlled information environment, it's a controlled civil society environment, so if the state doesn't like what the EU is doing, then civil society can't engage with the EU, which is basically what we just heard, which I get. But what is the EU or any other participant supposed to do? Only the things that one party likes? That doesn't map to getting us anywhere in terms of forward momentum. I know that's uncomfortable, but it's, it's the logical sort of thing I take away from this. To Bakhtiar, I am really sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you had to go through that, and I'm sorry that your family had to go through that. I will start by speaking for myself. I should have paid more attention. I was busy covering other countries and their conflicts and issues, and only after 2020 did I personally turn to this region as an area of focus. I think Armenians should have focused more on what happened holistically and understand what the Azerbaijani experience had been. It was always the pretext, and I see and I can make my own analysis of what I think Armenia did wrong along the way. I think there was a lot of nationalism and a lot of bluster. I'm not as rude, I feel like the least among equals of my colleagues to talk about that because I'm not a scholar of the region and I wasn't paying close attention in 2020, but I do think it's before 2020 I mean, but I think it's very clear that the leadership of Armenia for many, many years missed opportunities to make peace. I know people, sometimes it's assumed that the diaspora is the one not wanting peace, but I don't think that's true. I know many voices, including the ones I'm close to, urging the leadership, one after the other in Armenia, to make peace. Time is not on your side. Make peace. So it's a little more complicated sometimes than it's portrayed. It's not that the diaspora is a crazy nationalism and at home it's all, it's another way. I think this was used as a political gain for a lot of Armenian presidents and prime ministers, leaders, who ran on campaigns of victory in Nagorno-Karabakh and this and that and a lot of bluster. I think there was a terrible track record of that. A lot of complacency, and I don't know who could have or should have raised more empathy for what you and many other IDPs went through, but it should have happened. And these sorts of holistic conversations should have happened. So that I know. I don't know, I'm just starting to learn more and more, sort of you could call me, I live in Yerevan, I also live in Dubai. I am a new member of the Armenian commentariat, but I do think probably there were definitely calls for peace, but I don't know that there were the open minds that there should have been, but there were dialogues. I think there were attempts, but something obviously didn't work. And I know some of the complaints from the Armenian side as to why they didn't work. I try to be as objective as possible. I'm overexposed, of course, to Armenian voices, but that's also because Azerbaijanis are often not allowed to talk to me, or they're very mean to me on Twitter, or they can't make a phone call to Armenia. So I have limited opportunities sometimes, but that is no excuse. There are a lot of mistakes. And to Mr. Aliyev, I really appreciate your intervention. I really appreciate your perspective on why this should be a double standard and your perception that it's a double standard. My perception is I call the Nagorno-Karabakh issue Stalin's gift to the 21st century. This was made to be problematic, and it was successful. I understand that that's not your understanding. I totally get that. But Nagorno-Karabakh as a political construct was autonomous among Armenians, and when the Soviet Union fell, it was assigned to Azerbaijan. It petitioned through the rules of the Soviet Union to be reassigned to Armenia. This is their perspective. It did everything legally required to enforce its autonomy. It, like other Soviet republics, felt that at the end of the Soviet Union they would get independence. Whether or not you think that's legitimate, and you can probably really good lawyers with a grounding in Soviet law to have a better conversation about this than I can, but their perception was that as an autonomous oblast of the Soviet Union, the end of the Soviet Union meant independence for them, the way it did for all other Soviet political constructs. So they assumed that. It was always going to be thorny and difficult to figure out how you solve that formula. But again, I don't think the solution to it is to go in by force and end the issue, which is what seems to have happened this week. Gabriel Gavin of Politico, while we have been sitting here, has tweeted that there's gunfire in Stepanakert and a movement of ground troops into Stepanakert. That's not me, that's Gabriel Gavin of Politico. So while we are sitting here and while the talks are happening in Azerbaijan, we're hearing credible reports from a credible journalist that there's continued gunfire and movement of troops into Nagorno-Karabakh. So again, I don't take a position personally, neither does APRI, the think tank I work for, about what the solution should be, but this is not how you get to one. And it is complicated. It's complicated by design. It was meant to be a tripwire to keep Armenians and Azerbaijanis fighting for a very long time so that they would rely upon Moscow to pull them apart. And so I completely understand that from one side of this, it looks like separatism and many other things. And for Armenians, it looks like a legitimate exercise of their democratic rights. They don't think they're going to live better as citizens of Azerbaijan. They read the Freedom House reports, the status of minorities in Azerbaijan. The only way, Azerbaijan gets the lowest possible score for treatment of minorities by Freedom House. They want assurances that they are not going to have a terrible time of it and that they're not going to suffer massacres or atrocities. Whether or not you think those are credible threats, the right way to calm those threats is through dialogue and not through a military assault. That's all. Sincerity toward peace, for reasons good or bad, Nikol Pashinyan is desperate for a real peace deal. He does not want a war. Armenia can't afford it, they know it. They're very aware of Azerbaijan's superior military capacities. They don't want to suffer more sons. They took huge losses in 2020. So for reasons good, bad, enlightened, or practical, Nikol Pashinyan is desperate for a peace deal. And you see that, and he's made very deep concessions. And it's not just the diaspora that gets upset. There's a lot of frustration in Armenia. And if these efforts don't result in a real peace deal, he's going to be in a lot of trouble politically. I'll pause there.
Thank you, Lara. Yes, it was quite difficult for me to cut this conversation, and I'm sorry that I kept you longer than I initially planned, because I think the conversations that we had here were so important, and all the voices that we heard were so important. So I'm thanking all of you for participating in this dialogue at a very crucial time, and to participate in it respectfully, and making the conscious decision to listen to perspectives that are not yours, and I think this is true for everyone who's been present here in the room. From the Candid Foundation side, I can say that we are committed to this dialogue that Lara has mentioned, that we are working forward, and that we want to continue a closer cooperation between the civil societies of the South Caucasus and of the European Union. And I think this is also, despite all differences that were mentioned today, something that everyone in the room can or has expressed their support for, that we need a continuous and stronger cooperation between Europe and the South Caucasus. So I want to leave it on that note, and thank you all again for coming. Thank you. And one last thing that I want to mention, who has not said anything yet, I also would like to thank Restart Initiative, one of our partners in this event, together with APRI Armenia. Emily has been working quite heavily on this event to make it possible. So thank you.